Bushwhacks were some of the worst days I've ever had in the mountains, or life, really.
Whereas Panther Mountain is totally opposite. It's a mountain on top of a crater.
I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult.
It was really the development of New York State. Catskills were responsible.
Now you're listening to Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast.
All right. So, okay, episode 200. Let's get these audio settings correct so we can pop open our thing to celebrate.
Wow, you're jumping right into that. Okay,
I mean, we're not going to talk about it, but
no. Well, no, I asked you, and you need to tell me. I have 2 beers here. Which one should I drink? I have this Brewers Reserved bourbon barrel aged stout.
Wow.
With the alcohol content of, I think it's 10.6.
Jesus, whoa.
Yeah, it says don't drink near an open flame.
Yeah.
One of the warnings here. And then if I was pregnant, I'm not supposed to drink it either. So, but I'm not going to do a pregnancy test. Because,
that sounds like a good one to start off with. I'd like to hear a little tipsy Tad.
All right. Or I have this Grim Utopos Pilsner with Mocha 2 hops, but it's only 5.4%.
Yeah.
5.5.
Other
so
one.
What do you say? The other one? Is that you go for the high test? Okay. So I'm getting queued up here.
All right. I'm going first. All right. Ready? Beautiful. Thank you. Cheers to 200. Oh.
I ditto that.
Cheers to 200, Ted. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. I can't see where you are.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Cheers. I'll tell you about this later. New one.
Well, this smells good and potent.
Oh, yes. So we're going to get the good Tad here. So tipsy Tad. So episode 200. Woo! All right. Thank you, everybody who is stuck with us this far. Tad, this is your 85th episode with the podcast.
Wow.
Correct?
Yeah. I turn 85 next week. So
good. Yes.
I'm in sync. I'm in sync with the show. I think Monday is my birthday.
I'm half your age. So awesome. Awesome. So 85 episodes, Tad. And this is my 200th episode, 115 solo. So,
well, but didn't you had one that was 2 parts, the bear pen. So are you counting that really as one?
I don't count that now. I count that as one. That was fun.
Well, that's where you did very little talking on that episode.
He was awesome.
Shame on me. Yeah.
He was great.
You got to love those guests that you just ask them a question and they go, and you can go do your laundry while they're answering it and come back. And I'd done my tax returns one time when somebody was answering a question. Doesn't bother me. Yeah, nice. Tonight when you talk about episodes past, I'm going to be drinking this like high octane Brewers Select or Brewers Reserve. So, all right, take it away.
So tonight we have Lucy Sante on there tonight with us talking about the Catskill Reservoir System. Her book, 19 Reservoirs, would talk about the displacement of the Catskill towns that were created demolished for the Catskill Reservoirs that were created for NYC. So awesome. Going to be a great chat. Once again, we are recording, correct? Tad, I don't think we're recording.
No, I see that. I see it. We're recording.
You do?
Don't. My producer. Yeah, my producer here is telling me. Joe Rogan is in the side here, making sure everything's going smoothly.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Joe, we're recording. Okay.
All right. So we'll once again, Lucy joins us later. Awesome chat about the Catskill Reservoir System, the displacement stuff that went on during the 1900s to the 1960s, the early 1900s, 1960s, talking about the towns that were demolished for the reservoirs for NYC water. It's a fantastic time. But first, Tad, trail runners. We have trail runners here. We have trail runners listen to the show. Have you heard about this challenge this event at Bel Air called Climb for Climate?
No, I haven't. I mean, we should probably bring in Ed when it comes to trail running.
Right? Ed's he could come back for this. I hope he's going to join us. So it's called the Climb for Climate event at Bel Air Ski Center in August. I think it's August 26th, I believe. Organized by a group called The Running Kind, which is a zero emission event. We'll get back into that. Well, The Running Kind, the event that they're throwing the event will be subsidizing the costs to the offset of the event. However, there is a fee included for the reservation for the specifically for the cost. So once again, this offset for the carbon emissions that you will be traveling for your personal travel to it and from the event will offset your costs and stuff like that. So this is a 25K and an 8K. The 25K covers around 16 miles with over 5,000 feet of elevation gain, and the 8K does a little over 1,000 feet of gain. Cool thing is back and forth is you can donate gently worn used or new shoes are accepted for donations for the Sneakers for Goods, and this money raised for Sneakers for Good program will go to a nonprofit partner called the Catskill Center. So the Climb for Climate, August 16th, at the Bel Air Ski Resort, presented by Hoka. How do you say that?
Well, you say it hookah because it's like a mild Freudian slip for you.
It is. I've worn those shoes for like 5 years now for working, and I say hookah, and people are like hoka. I'm like, I don't really give a fuck. What is it? What do you say?
I don't own a pair of those because they kind of freak me out, man. Looking at
because
shoes.
they're thick, right?
Well, they're thick, and it's like they're thin at the toes and thicker at the. I have no idea. It's like at my age, I have those white slip-ons with the Velcro.
the New Balance.
Yeah, because when
nice.
when my wife and I go to the mall and walk around in the morning, I fit in with those. Yeah.
So I sent you a link. It looks like the 25K starts at the base of Bel Air, somewhat the base of one of Bel Air, the ski resort, and then hits up the one of the roads area that leads up to the top of the resort, then goes over the Bel Air Mountain, then down to Ryder Hollow, up Balsam Mountain. I think it's back down to Ryder Hollow, then up to the call of Balsam Mountain, and then back down to McKinley Hollow. I mean, that's what I see. It doesn't show a specific path of where it goes, but that's the general area. And then of course the 8K goes up above Bel Air and then back down to Bel Air on one of the ski runs. I would think one of the ski runs, stuff like that. So looks to be a really cool event. Cool thing is that we have the Running Kind. Amy from the Running Kind is going to be joining us on a future episode about this. So about this, and of course about the organization, the Run a Climb. So it's going to be really cool to talk about this. But I wanted to bring this up. Anybody who's thinking about it, August 16th, 2026. Tad, what do you think about doing a live show from there?
Yeah, all right. If you want to, as long as I don't have to run alongside somebody and ask them questions.
We'll put a microphone on Ed.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, Ed is chill enough, and he would, he'd be down for it.
It would be so much fun. He'd be like, "Hey, dude, how you doing?" The guy's like, "Miserable. Screw you."
No, I don't know if it's still on Instagram or not, but there's this great little story or reel of Ed finishing. I think it was 100 miles.
It was. I somebody posted it and then I downloaded it and reposted it. But he's like doing twists and turns and waving his hands.
He's dancing across
I love it.
The finish line, and that's where, if I remember the story correctly, brother Ed, in the wee hours of the night, he and the group he was running with went off course and had to ford a river or something. It's an epic Ed tale, and it's like, wow, damn, that's a lot of work. So I'd be interested to see it. I'm surprised they're not spending more time running up and down the ski slopes than what is shown in the map that they've put up there. I think you look at the profile, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they start at 2,000 feet, and then once you get to Rider Hollow,
Yeah.
that goes to below 2,000 feet, close to 1,000 feet. And then you got to go back up. Once again, like looking at the profile, I can't make out which direction they're going. Somewhat, I'm guessing they're going up and down Balsam and then back down to McKinley Hollow. At least they don't have to climb McKinley Hollow, because that's a bitch. That's one of the highest, steepest grades in the Catskills.
Yeah, well, if you're not paying attention and you make a wrong turn, you'll end up climbing McKinley Hollow. So
Yeah,
there'll
true.
be one of the people in the group might make that wrong turn and end up down at the bottom of McKinley Hollow and have to turn around.
Yeah. So look out for a future episode with the Running Kind. Amy from the Running Kind is going to join us in January, I believe. We'll talk about the Climate for Climate event going on at Bel Air. All your runners, get up, sign up. Tad, once again, I am thinking this is going to be a great chance to do a live episode from there. Just need power. We'll talk, we'll chat about, what's going on, our experiences going up and down Bel Air, and, when people finish and stuff, maybe interview them and stuff. I find this is a great event.
Okay. So bring your lawn chairs and 6-packs, and we'll see you on the 16th of August at Bel Air.
Yeah, 2026. So Tad, got a little rescue that happened just recently, about 10 days ago. Town of Olive. Anybody knows where Olive is? Nobody knows what Olive is, do they?
Yeah, I had a few olives in my salad tonight, but I think this is a different olive.
Definitely.
What they're referring to.
So November 29th, 5:25 p.m., Raybrook Dispatch called Forest Ranger Horn, who we had previously on the show, about a subject lost near the summit of Samuels Point, a trailless peak on the Slide Mountain Wilderness. Now, a lot of people are not familiar with Samuels Point. They don't know the real name, but if you're looking at Wittenberg, if you're on the top of Wittenberg and looking over the reservoir, Samuel Point is that big hump that you see right on the reservoir. Number one, it isn't the easiest to get up. Everybody thinks it looks pretty easy, but it's not. Mountain laurel all over the place. So 57-year-old from New York City was visiting a friend who lives near the base of the peak, which I'm guessing is Moon Hollow. The hiker bushwhacked almost to the summit before dark, but became disoriented in the thick vegetation, which is the mountain laurel. The subject was relying on a cell phone for maps, but lost cellular connection. The subject used the satellite messenger feature on the phone to message a friend from New York City to call 911. Rangers Francisquina and Horn obtained the coordinates and released the subject at 7:45. The Rangers provided food and warm clothes and assist the hiker out to the patrol vehicles by 9 p.m. iPhone. That seems like what it is, right? That new satellite feature?
Yeah, which is interesting that somebody has that on their phone. They used it and it worked for them, which is an indication that Garmin and the InReach is reaching a point of being obsolete.
Yeah. Desperation. Is that what you say it? How you say it? And they're going to be desperate and they're going to be low in stuff? Low in prices, maybe?
Oh, yeah. And then eventually they'll stop upgrading it, and your Garmin InReach device and satellite messaging devices will be, no longer needed gear. You'll have your phone, which is basically the InReach runs off your phone anyway. I mean, the easiest way to use it is to have the app on your phone and then just tap out your message on the phone and send it via the app to the InReach device.
Yeah. And that's what I did when I was up in New Hampshire is, I connected it through my phone and stuff, and it was very easy to do that. But, once again, watch out for Garmin slash prices, stuff like that. I got to admit their fees per month is a little ridiculous when you're not using it. It's like $5 per month when you're not using it. That's ridiculous. And then $30 something when you're using it. That's great. But once again, I can't justify getting one and then not using it for 8 months.
Yeah, I hear you, but that's like the typical business model these days is the monthly or annual subscription service, whether you're paying it in a per month basis or an annual basis, the days of, buying a program and paying for it one time and not having to pay again, those days are long gone.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a little piece of your money every month.
And we're all budgeting. I don't know, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, you're all budgeting. And when I went up to New Hampshire, I tried to find a way that I could kind of limit my budget, of course, to not be like, I gotta get a Garmin and rent it for this, to keep my wife's anxiety at ease and stuff. But like, once again, I don't want to buy one for $400 and then rent it for 2 months, 3 months out of the year. And then for the rest of the months, pay like $6, $7 for not to use it. That's just ridiculous. So I was just like, maybe there's something on my phone, or I can rent it from someone or something like that. It just kills me. And then this, the iPhone features are now, the Garmin's going to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot what the other product I was looking at another product. I think
there's one called Spot is another product that's out there for satellite messaging. I mean, we can look at them. I just remember when I first started hiking in the Catskills, I had a handheld Garmin GPS device for navigation. And after a year and a half or two, the navigation apps on the phone were good enough that the Garmin device was no longer desirable to carry around.
Wow. When was this? Like 2015? What were you thinking? Like what year?
Yeah, 2000. So I started using this when my daughter and I were hiking extensively in the Gunks, primarily just to record our tracks, because it was kind of fun to be able to have like your own personal heat map. So I would say I got rid of that unit probably in 2018.
Yeah, that sounds legit.
Yeah. And then I went over to Gaia, but I would use CalTopo for desktop mapping, my bushwhacks. And at the time, CalTopo did not have a smartphone app. And since then, within the last year and a half or two, sources say that CalTopo has a pretty robust and feature-rich app. So its apps gaining traction. And I still like to look at CalTopo when I'm planning bushwhacks, because it does have a lot of added mapping features. Who knows? Maybe I'll switch my Gaia data over to CalTopo, start using it.
SAR, Search and Rescue, they have CalTopo kind of adjusted for a SAR topo. So a lot of search and rescue organizations like the DEC and stuff uses SAR topo for their mapping and stuff when we're, doing rescues and we're doing searches and stuff like that. So it's very reliable. I agree with you on Gaia. Gaia is very reliable, and CalTopo is very reliable as well.
I think Gaia, All Trails, and there's probably another one I'm not mentioning, but they have a lot of crowdsourced data on them now, which I don't think you get with CalTopo. Because we see on Gaia all sorts of trails and things. Even that bus on Cheryl shows up on Gaia.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? So, Tad, we'll talk about the weather later, but, before we get into this Christmas tree talk, we have some weather coming in. We're recording Tuesday, and I see on the maps that we're going to be getting I wouldn't say significant snowstorm, but over 6 inches of snow. So got some weather coming in, snow coming in. In Oneonta, I'm supposed to get, if they say 2 to 7, fucking whatever. And then I heard in the Catskills, 6 to 8. So.
Yeah, my pro tip when it comes to trying to get a sense on how much fresh snow you're going to find at higher elevations, all the ski areas report the snowfall at the base elevation of the ski area. And typically they also have their report showing how much snowfall they received at the summit of the ski area, where the highest lift goes. So you can go to Bel Air, you can go to Plattekill, you can go to Windham, Hunter, and check out their trail condition pages. And then there's also a web page. One of them is called On the Snow, that aggregates all that data from the different ski areas, and you can see what they're reporting at the higher elevations, which is a better indication than what the Weather Channel forecast is for the town of Hunter or Pine Hill, to see what they got at the lower elevations. So
Yeah.
Go there. Also check out the trail cams that they have on these ski area pages, and they'll show you what's occurring then and there at the time. Sometimes you just look for how much snow is stacked up on top of the chairs, as they're not operating at night, around picnic benches at the base area, and that'll give you a sense of how much snow has fallen.
Yeah. And you're on Facebook, Catskill Trail Conditions is a good one. Hike the Catskills, I believe, has trail conditions. Catskill Center has trail conditions as well. But I find the best source is a Facebook, Catskill Trail Conditions. People hike, they post their trail conditions immediately, like 2 hours after.
So what do you do when you're hiking on Saturday, but nobody's hiked that area on Friday? So there's no Facebook posts.
I say most of the people are smart enough to bring everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people bring that's hike on Saturdays are the ones that bring snowshoes and spikes, and they post accurate trail reports of like, hey, we hiked up to the Jimmy Dole and Notch and spikes and then had to switch to snowshoes, which was absolutely awesome. I love it. I love seeing the progress of what was once, of everybody asking every goddamn 5 seconds about which mountain had needed snowshoes or spikes, to everybody just bringing spikes and snowshoes, has progressed pretty crazy, like pretty great. Like I'm grateful for that. And it's good to see, amongst the years, because once again, everybody used to post every Thursday, like, should I bring spikes to Twin Mountain after a significant ice storm? Or when there was 6 to 8 inches of snow, should I bring snowshoes? Now it's basically like 1 or 2 people asking that question, and then everybody brings their snowshoes and spikes, because we have that general knowledge of being like, oh wow, we have to bring snowshoes after 6 inches of snow.
Yeah,
I know you're not a Facebook kind of guy. You got to get back on there, Tad. You'd be famous on there.
Nah, that's not my ambition. But I do promote hiking safely and as responsible as you can under the circumstances. So everybody's entitled to just have a little wildness in what they do. So you don't have to be responsible all the time.
All right. So what about next about this the Christmas trees in Manhattan?
Yeah, I was looking for some stuff to put in here for the 200th episode, and what I was looking for at the time was the 10 best stocking stuffers for hikers. Okay. And so I did pull up a lot of different, lists of different stocking stuffers for hikers, and none of them impressed me. In fact, a lot of the stuff that was put on these lists was not stuff that hikers would carry. It was more like stuff that backpackers would carry, that hikers wouldn't need. But in my Google searches, I came up with this article that was, I don't know if I put the thing down here, but it was Christmas traditions you didn't know that started in upstate New York. And so one of these little known upstate New York Christmas traditions was posted as follows. An upstate mountain man started a Christmas tree tradition. Mark Carr was a woodsman from the Catskill Mountains. In 1861, he and his sons chopped down about 40 fir and Scotch pine trees from their farm, loaded them onto 2 large ox-drawn sleds, and hauled them to New York City. At the outskirts of the city, they ferried the trees across the Hudson for the final leg of their journey. Once in Manhattan, they set up a small Christmas tree lot on property that they rented for $1 near Washington Market at the corner of Vesey and Greenwich Streets. Sales were brisk. City dwellers eagerly embraced the new concept of buying Christmas trees locally instead of traveling outside of the city. Carr sold out his entire supply in just 2 days. He and his sons returned to their Catskill farm to gather more trees, and this tradition was born. I think it's bullshit.
Well, I'm curious of where in the Catskills this was.
Well, it's not so much where in the Catskills it was, but he could bring down was 40 trees, and it took him 2 days to sell them.
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, in New York City.
Okay.
I would think you would sell in 1861. How many people lived in New York City? But I would think he would have sold out his 40 trees in a day.
I mean, like hours.
Yeah.
And somebody would smell that fresh pine and be like, I want this in my freaking bedroom.
Yeah. And if you were going through all that effort, why wouldn't you, instead of just bringing down 2 sleds of trees, bring down 4? Ask some of your buddy farmers, hey, I got this great idea. You guys cut down some trees, you join us, we'll do this together. But I thought it was interesting, and it was better than, like bringing a panini press on your hiking trip, stocking stuffer. Yeah. Some of the stocking stuffers were like, stocking stuffer idea. One of them was like recommending a 40-liter backpack.
Okay. How the fuck are you gonna what are you, an ultralight backpacker? You can
yeah, or just as a stocking stuffer. I'm gonna figure out, this is the backpack that Stosh wants. Let's see. I know that normally he carries about 200 pounds of gear with him. So I'm gonna get him a 120-liter pack. Diesel powered.
That's once again, like a backpack. You're like, what if this backpack does not fit the frame of the person that's going to carry it?
Right.
They have 400 backpacks available for.
So maybe we should come up with our own list of stocking stuffers. Maybe we should peruse what the folks at Camp Catskill have posted on their page, and we'll give our top 10 list of things that listeners can buy Stosh and Tad
next
for Christmas.
episode.
I mean, they're friends. Yeah, they're friends, Stosh and Tad.
I'm going to write this down. Thank you, Tad. Next episode, definitely.
201.
Oh, that's with Alex Mara. Oh, that's going to be great microclimates. Oh, okay. Yes. I will put that down. 10 best stocking stuffers. Thank you very much, Tad. Actually, I was at REI today, and God damn, shit is expensive.
Where do they have an REI your way?
Up in Albany.
Oh, okay.
Shit's expensive. Luckily, I tried on something. I'm in the search of a new down jacket because my old LL Bean one is kind of getting old. And
so, what are you going to wear it for? What's your intended use? To pack along with you hiking or otherwise?
Pack along with extreme temperatures, which is very rare in the Catskills. I very rarely use a down jacket, but I just
Patagonia Nano Puff.
I've heard that, the Arc'teryx one is kind of grabbing me.
Yeah,
lightweight. It's lightweight. It's got A50 down, and it's good. Once again, they say that it's good sweating areas under the armpits.
So your first decision was choosing down over synthetic.
Correct, because I'm going to have my Helly Hansen shell.
And so you're hiking, you're crossing the west branch of the Neversink, and there's no bridge there, as you might have known, and you fall into the water, and your 850 down-filled Arctera jacket gets soaking wet. Its thermal value just goes to the cellar.
It does.
But the Nano Puff is still going to keep you warm. Maybe not as warm as wool would, but wool doesn't pack down to fit in the palm of your hand like the Nano Puff does. I think that's the big selling feature for Catskill hiking with the Nano Puff. You're not above tree line, so you don't need something that's built up for extreme conditions like in the Adirondacks or the Whites. But for Catskill hiking, the Nano Puff is so small, and it has the added bonus of being made of synthetic material, recycled synthetic material. So it retains its thermal properties, or a lot of them, even when it gets wet. So that's my plug for the Nano Puff,
Well done.
of which I am the proud owner of one.
Okay. So the only kind of objection I have to that is when the Catskills, once again, you're below tree line. So the trees are going to connect or catch more of the snow and stuff like that. You're not going to get as much as the weather as you need for synthetic.
Well, if you're talking about like it getting torn to shreds by balsam fir trees, right? That's where
true.
you have like the shitty throwaway shell. I wear the
But the Helly Hansen shell is not a shitty throwaway.
But you don't want it you don't want that when you're going uphill. You want something that's more breathable. So going uphill, I have this Arcterra, just really Arcteryx windbreaker that is super breathable, but I've been using it 3 years now. It hasn't torn yet, and I run into branches all the time.
It blocks the shit out of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it works well enough for, the Catskills. Obviously, you go further north, you need stuff that's a little bit more built for extreme conditions.
But then you go up north with the high winds and stuff, you'll have your base layers, which is like your t-shirt, your long sleeve, and then you have your puffy, and then your shell, which will kind of acts like a total. With the Catskills, you'll need one or the other. Like, or when you're at the summit, you want to talk, like, Tad, I know you love to chat. I mean, I know you're.
How would you know? You don't hike with me anymore.
I do.
Jesus.
I've hiked. You love people. You sit at the summit. You talk to people. Everybody knows who the fuck you are. It's insane. And you're just like, God damn, I'm getting cold. Let me throw on this puffy jacket and then my shell. And all these people are like, okay, we got to keep going. Tad's sitting there talking, like, oh man, I'm so warm. This is great.
I think one time I actually went up to the Catskills and talked for 20 years. A fellow wrote a book about that. He got my name wrong though. But here the solution to the dilemma is you have a lightweight Nano Puff, and then you have something that's more beefier for when you go up to the the North Country, and you bring them both. I mean, the Nano Puff, I have one in my pack. It's about a third the size of my down jacket.
Oh, wow.
So.
But do you know? I mean, that's another thing I was looking on is weight. I mean, I'm not crazy about the weight, but this was like 12 ounces, so it was like a pound. Yeah. And
the Nano Puff, I think, is under 7.
Oh shit! Whoa, ultra. Yeah. That's ultra lightweight. We're talking ultra lightweight.
Yeah. So what convinces me on the Nano Puff is my daughter is on her second Nano Puff. And she wore the first one everywhere. And, she's in some pretty abrasive environments. And a couple times we put some patches on it and whatnot. And after like 5-6 years, it just looked really ratty and worn out. So I got her a new one 2 years ago. But she's also one of these people that is forever cold or chilled. And the Nano Puff was for her like that go-to piece of gear that would keep her warm. And she's done some, pretty high elevation stuff. I mean, she hasn't done 14,000 footers, but she's been to 12 and 13,000 feet. So,
I'd say that's legit.
Yeah, I'm convinced. The Nano Puff for the Catskills. Well, and also it depends on your body temperature. For me, I might go all year with just having it in my pack and never using it. Whereas somebody else, you see some of these other people and they're really bundled up. So, but I'll put my plug in again.
Yeah, I wrote that down and we'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah, synthetic Nano Puff.
Yeah, Nano Puff synthetic. All right, I got it. Last shooting the shit this is a big thing that's been blowing up with social media and stuff like that. Mountaineer leaves girlfriend behind near the summit, getting charged for intolerance. This happened in January of 2025 in Austria. An experienced mountaineer has been charged with leaving his struggling girlfriends to freeze to death on Austria's highest peak with their fatal track caught in the webcam. 33-year-old woman was found dead roughly 160 feet from the summit of Grosslockner Mountain back in January when she and her 36-year-old boyfriend had set off on a hike. The couple, who had not been identified yet, once again, it's been almost a year, about 2 a.m. when the girlfriend apparently struggled and couldn't go any further. Now, the guy who was with her, apparently a more experienced climber than allegedly set off to find help, but failed to shelter his partner from the wind or wrap her with his aluminum wrap blankets that they had from her freezing temperatures. And they say the defendant left his girlfriend unprotected, exhausted, hypothermic, and disoriented about 50 meters, which is 160 feet, as in American terms, below the summit of Grossglockner Mountain. The woman froze to the left to death, and prosecutors said Thursday, while charging the boyfriend with the grossly negligent manslaughter. The defendant, unlike his girlfriend, was already very experienced with alpine high-altitude tours and had planned the tour. He was considered to be responsible and the guide of the tour, so that brought the responsibilities of a guide at the time. Wind gusts were reaching speeds of 45 miles per hour. Temperature was roughly 17 degrees. He made contact with emergency at 3:30 a.m., but then was unreachable at the time. His phone was silent and stowed away. And then once again, there was a mountain cam that viewed them with their lights, their headlamps on. Their inexperience had never undertaken the high alpine altitude of this length difficulty. Despite the challenging winter conditions, the defender undertook the high altitude trail. Once again, they apparently they've been on this trail. I wouldn't say they. It's said a couple times that they or he has been on this trail 3 or 4 times. But they've been apparently on this trail once or twice, and he left her up, kind of sent down to get help, but that was the wrong decision and just left her up to die. And she unfortunately passed away with freezing conditions. And I have this in the show notes. You can see what the mountain looks like. I wouldn't say this is a mountain. This is a goddamn fucking peak, with exposed areas throughout. I mean, we're talking Austria, which is no joke. So once again, the webcams, stuff like that, show, you can see the headlamps and stuff. And the one thing that I find, Tad, as I looked a little bit further into this, and that they had rescuers go up with a helicopter. They found kind of where she was and then flew away. I don't know if it was weather conditions were bad or stuff like that. And I mean, or they saw that there was no form of life and stuff like that. So it's one of those I mean, this was January that this happened, 2045, and this is kind of resurfacing because he is faced with manslaughter in Austria, which I don't know what the kind of consequences are. I mean, I know one of my favorite bands, Lamb of God, Randy Blythe, was in Prague, which is like, I mean, it's not Austria, but was considered for manslaughter for pushing a guy off of a stage, and then the guy died because he got pushed off the stage, and then he suffered like 2 years in prison, which is pretty insane. So I don't know what Austria sees as manslaughter, but this is pretty crazy. I mean,
yeah, well, I think to pass judgment on this guy, you need to know a lot more than what's given in this story, particularly how the Austrians define this crime of criminally negligent manslaughter, or whatever they call it there. And who knows what explanation he has, whether it's a good one or not, for apparently turning off his phone and leaving his lesser experienced girlfriend behind. We talked a few weeks ago about the group that split and left the asthmatic hiker behind. And what if that person passed away? Would the hikers who continued on to the summit of Slide Mountain be liable for criminally negligent homicide because they left behind somebody who died from an asthmatic attack who didn't bring with them their inhaler. There's just, a lot of things with that story and a lot of things with this story that are left out of the story that we would want to know before we could actually have any meaningful opinion about who's right, who's wrong. But it's surely a tragic thing. And I think the takeaway from this is when you do something like this, the call in was at 2 a.m. This wasn't an afternoon hike. This is one of these hikes that they started super early, presumably because they were either going to try to catch the sunrise up there, or that's how long it takes to get up there. But this is something that when you set out to do this, you shouldn't take lightly. And maybe this person shouldn't have been with him. Maybe they shouldn't have left when they did. But it would seem on the one hand that the responsibility of doing this hike was lightly taken. On the other hand, we just don't know enough. Sad. Feel for her parents and other family members. And maybe this guy just freaked out because he took his girlfriend up there and she's dying. I've been with somebody who's been in the early stages of hypothermia, not out in the mountains hiking, but on a sailboat in the middle of a lake in the spring. It's cold. And, I took care of my buddy and got him back to shore. And I'm thankful for that. I don't know what was going through this guy's head, but it's a very sad thing.
And, dealing with this kind of hypothermia and stuff like that, you said once again, who knows who was going through this guy's head? Was he suffering from hypothermia?
That's
his judgment.
That's one of the things is as it gets further and further advanced, your judgment and ability to sort through problems gets more and more diminished. And when I was with that fellow, we were tuning up a race boat and we capsized it and then turtled it. And, it was just evident to me that he just wasn't thinking straight. And so it was his boat, but I had to take over the situation. And it worked out well for us, but who knows what was going on. And those folks are up, over 12,000 feet. It's windy. It's really, really cold. Who's to say these blankets would have done anything?
Right.
Who's to say his staying next to her would have done anything? Maybe he went to where he was because that was the only way he could get out of the wind and save himself. And it was evident to him that she couldn't be saved. And so he made that choice to go elsewhere. None of us can say whether we would or wouldn't have made the same choice because we weren't there. But it just underscores that when you're climbing those types of mountains above tree line, you got to really pay attention to the conditions and who you're with, because often who you're with becomes the weak link in the chain. Yeah. So it's very sad.
Being search and rescue, you're thinking all aspects. If this person couldn't be saved, you don't want to make this a double rescue. Once again, we're waiting for them, and you die. It's just it's a very tough decision, and But 12 though, what was it? You said 12,000 feet, 12,000 something feet.
Yeah, it's just shy of 13,000 feet. So you're up there where
up there.
Look, they say he was an experienced climber, so we're going to assume that he wasn't suffering from the altitude that he was at. But that could have been a factor, that he was somewhat, his faculties were somewhat compromised by the thinning air at 12,000.
Right.
Let's say they were at 12,300 feet from the description given, or 12,100 feet. I know my first time when I was over 10,000 feet and I was a teenager, I was like, whoa. That to me was startling how thin the oxygen was just at that altitude. So there's just a lot of factors here. This story doesn't give enough information, and it's a very tragic thing.
Went out for almost a year.
Yeah. And it's not surprising on the one hand that he's just getting prosecuted now. We don't know how the legal system works over there and why it appeared to take 11 months to file charges against him. I mean, it could really suck for this guy, because if he really loved this person and was traumatized by what happened, and now he might go to jail over it. Oh, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
So feel for the guy.
Yeah. Feel for her. Yeah. Sorry to bring that. No, we should have brought like the
You're killing my vibe, man. I'm
I
drinking
know.
this. I'm drinking this like bourbon barrel aged stout, which is really delicious.
I should have brought that up first. Sorry.
Yeah. And now we're talking about the death of somebody's daughter up there. It's
All
crazy. All right. What a great 200th episode celebration.
Right.
Stosh.
Oh God.
Jeez.
Jesus. All right. So once again, thank you to the monthly supporters, Bob McLean, Jer Skirby, Jeff Jotz, Vicky Ferrer, Mikey S, John Comiskey, Summit Seekers, Desert City Radio, Betsy A, Denise W, Vanessa, Jim C, and Eric. Thank you guys so much for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Also, thank you to the sponsor of the show, Capture Your Love Story Against Breathtaking Backdrops with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Molly specializes in adventure, couple photography, and she'll immortalize your moments amidst the stunning landscapes of the Catskills, Adirondacks, and White Mountains. She'll craft timeless images that reflect unique bond in nature's grandeur. Embark on an unforgettable photographic journey with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Don't hesitate to get a hold of Molly on all platforms. Also, discover the Wilderness with Trailbound Project. Our expert-led hiking and backpacking education programs offer unparalleled outdoor experiences. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned adventurer, join us to learn essential skills and explore stunning trails and connect with nature. Start your journey today with Trailbound Project and unlock the wonders of the great outdoors. So, Tad, you mentioned before what you're drinking. How about you talking about it again?
Oh, okay. So I am having a bourbon barrel aged stout put out by Central Waters Brewing Company of Wisconsin.
Whoa, weird.
Yeah. And it's they brew a stout beer and then they age it in bourbon barrels with coffee, whole vanilla beans, and cinnamon. And They say the flavor profile of this wonderful beer boasts a lush mouth feel with just the right amount of creamy spice character to mold the rich malt and barrel aged depth. And it's delicious. It's really good. And plus I got a little buzz from this. And on the side it says Surgeon General warning, do not consume this beverage if pregnant or if operating a microphone podcast. So yeah, I guess I have to sign off.
Oh, well, get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Well, good. Tonight I have a new one. It is American Apple Imperial Hard Cider. It says it's from Michigan, but then it also said like Walcott, New York, which is like up in the Finger Lakes area. I don't believe it. Just keeps saying something about Michigan. So
yeah, maybe they've got two locations like Angry Orchard does.
True. It's very good. I gotta admit, it's very delicious.
Yeah.
So,
well, I guess we both had good picks for the 200th episode.
Yeah, congratulations. All right, so what is next? So, who was really outdoors? So, oh my God, everybody was outdoors. So, mention the podcast on one of your hikes through social media, and we'll chat about it on the show. Tag us by typing at ITL Catskill MTM podcast on your post. Sorry, I could have made it easier, but I didn't. Might think there's something else. So it definitely looks like a snowshoe festival that has happened. Red Hand Adventure Guys, Mike was up the Adirondacks for a quiz visit and some hikes before winter starts. I want to once again point out that if I miss your your post. I'm sorry. It's like difficult to keep up with Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. It just like sometimes Instagram says like from 3 days ago, it's annoying as fuck. But Mike was up in the Adirondacks. AT Hikes, Aaron mentioned us in a post while he was out in Oman. Like fucking like, isn't that Jordan? Like
I don't know.
Like that's Oman. Like that's like out in freaking the Middle East, right? Yeah.
You could be right about that. I didn't
holy
check
shit.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, this guy is mentioned us in Oman. Like, oh, holy crap, that's amazing. Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate it. Beyond Blazes, Joanne did round topping Catskill High Peak and top it off with a visit to Catskill Falls. Joanne, thank you very much. Didn't tag us when you were on what's it called, Huckleberry Point, but that's okay. Still love you.
Well, I mean, she didn't tag us when she was on Huckleberry Point because that wasn't part of her single season fall grid. So it didn't matter if that hike counted or not, but because she just finished I think she said her 8th in a row single season for the fall, she definitely tagged us because she wanted it to count. I'm also, as I'm saying this, I was going to look up AT Hikes, aka Aaron's hike, but what came up first on my Instagram feed is our friend Zach, Death by Nettles, doing some weird stuff. He says bombing down Blackhead Mountain, and he's like trying to butt slide. So it's a worthwhile video to check out.
But
all
you
right,
didn't
back
tag
to you,
us, though.
Stosh. Yeah, I mean, so it really isn't happening. Too bad for Zach because I'm
Sorry,
sure.
Zach.
Yeah, I'm sure that his butt hurts after all of this. So, oh well.
So Todd Bold did Black Dome for his recovery hike. So Todd has been kind of on the amend with a bunch of different episodes with injuries and stuff like that. So Todd, glad to see you back out in the Catskills. Glad to see you out hiking and stuff like that. So great to see you back out again. Golden Money Cat Nicholas was up and down Westkill checking out the Native American landscape sculptures. He was asking me questions about that. I told him to talk about or to check out our episode with Glenn that talked about Native American landscape sculptures. It was a fantastic episode. So Jeff Jotz and Orla went up to High Point in New Jersey. What was that, like 1,300 feet? He ripped it up.
Yeah. I used to ride my bike up to High Point all the time.
Oh, Jeff, you gotta nail back at Tad for this. Outrageous. Off in the woods, Sean was up with Catskill Mountain Brew doing Indian Head and Twin, and then Catskill Mountain Brew with Scott was with Indian Head and Twin with Off in the Woods Sean. So back and forth. Looks like they had a good time. They said they did like snowshoes, parts of it, and then at the Ascent they did spikes. So they definitely were doing the right thing. So it's at this time of year, the snow could be fluffy, and on the way down, you should use spikes for safety. Depends on kind of like your snowshoe grip as well, but it's definitely a difficult decision this time of year.
Yeah, well, also it depends on the snow, and the recent snowfall did not generate, in my opinion, snow that really packed and kinked in together that would give you like a base or a platform to push off from, whether you're using a snowshoe or just simply bare booting it. So if this was your first time snowshoeing ever, you didn't really learn much about snowshoeing from this snow, other than having snowshoes on your feet and walking around with them. So I thought it was a really interesting snow this weekend. And maybe we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Yeah.
Daniel Passes was at Wyndham High Peak doing some great photos. Jamie Myers went up Panther from Fox Hollow and enjoyed a Devil's Path IP at the summit. Definitely one of the few times we've been tagged for someone enjoying a brew at the summit. So that's good to hear. Good job, Jamie. Joanne was again back out at Giant Legend Panther enjoying a untouched snow view. Good job, Joanne. Rachel Jean, the Gypsy Queen, is back at it at Hawkett. Good to see you back out at it, Rachel. Great. Once again, Vicky F49, tagged us at Fly and Bear Pen on a beautiful day. Stimmed one, Darren, was at Robert Tremont State Park over in Ithaca area. New one, the Sloth Tramps hiked up Westkill. Beautiful video. Shared that on my story, so check it out. Check out the Sloth Tramps. MJK 716th Matthew was trail running up Slide and Balsam Lake Mountain. Did both of those, and it looked like under 3 hours, which is pretty insane. Impressive. So Matthew, thank you for tagging us. Long Brown Path, Ken did Catamount Panther and Squirrel Mountain and Harriman in bare feet.
On snow.
On snow. Silent pause of just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, that's Ken. Ken's in his
That's
own
Ken.
zone. Yeah.
He's nailing it, and he's like up to like 500 something summits of close to his 1,000 summits.
Yeah, I think I saw 539.
Okay, 539.
I remember. Yeah.
Amazing. And last but not least, Labradante Brad did Pika Moose and Table on a beautiful winter day. So thank you everyone who has tagged us and is getting out on these beautiful winter conditions in the Catskills. It's only yet to come. We got some snow coming, so we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. Also, if you think we're doing a great job and you want to support the show, buy us a coffee hard cider on buymeacoffee.com. So Tracy Racken bought us 5 hard ciders, said thank you very much, Tad, and happy Christmas. Miss you, Tracy. We hope to see more of your posts out on the trail. So thank you very much, Tracy, for the hard ciders. So
Thanks, Tracy.
Hopefully she gets back out and she starts kicking ass. So
hopefully she didn't use all of her cat food money to buy those ciders.
Oh, those are great posts.
Yeah.
I love those posts. So rate the show 5 stars, please. Previous hikes, Tad. What I got nothing. I've been working. So
whoa, the 200th episode, and you don't have a hike to talk about.
This Sunday I will be going out. So sorry.
Okay, cool.
What do you got?
So a few weeks ago, I reported that Danny Davis and I had planned to do this hike up Cornell, but we decided to back out because of how much rain we had received, and this really wouldn't have been fun terrain to cover in the rain. So this weekend, we elected to do this hike, which consisted of meeting up at our pre-hike meeting spot, Bread Alone, talking about stuff in the hike and what to expect, and then heading over to the Woodland Valley parking area where we set out, crossed the bridge, and then as soon as we gained enough elevation to bushwhack around the private land that kind of consumes that section of Woodland Valley and get above upstream from it. We started hiking upstream up Woodland Valley, and Danny Davis, who has hiked, bushwhacked Cornell, Wittenberg, and Slide extensively, but is moving out of the area next May, has a few more ravines to explore. So we were going to explore one of these, and this is the ravine that is somewhat, it basically goes to the col of, not the col, to the summit proper of Cornell. So that's what we did. We headed up a 2.5 miles walk upstream of the Woodland Creek, started up this ravine, unlike the other ravines we've bushwhacked over there. This one had a ton of tree litter filling up the ravine or gorge that had been carved out by the stream that flows down that area, and had really, really steep banks. It went up at a pretty good incline. There was a lot of bedrock there. I'm sure with more water flow, you'd see some nice waterfalls in that area, but don't go there to take photographs of them because you got all this tree litter in front of the waterfalls, and it would kind of be hard to see them. But we made it uphill as far as it was needed to satisfy Danny's geological appetite regarding this. And then we kind of branched off to this talus slope of talus slopes going up Cornell. We were in anywhere, I'm going to say anywhere from 6 to 10 inches of snow. It's hard to say because we had really, really big rocks. We had boulders, but I'm not talking necessarily about the boulders. I'm talking about the rocks that were in this whole slope or talus area. And the bigger these rocks are, the bigger the voids are going to be between them. All of that was covered by this freshly fallen snow, which I had previously said wasn't the type of snow that really packed down or chinked together to give you a platform to push off of. And it wasn't really even enough in many instances to fill up the void, nor was there any snowfall from prior snowfalls filling these voids. So it was kind of sketchy going up this area. We did it at one point. We had our hill sounds on. We took them off, switched over to snowshoes, thinking that would be better, and also wanted just to use the televators to give our calves and our Achilles tendons a little relief. But because you really couldn't see what you were stepping into, that was just as sketchy, if not more sketchy, than going uphill. I did on my post, I did a comparison between the steepness of our ascent up this area versus going up Sugarloaf from Mink Hollow. And based upon the data I pulled, it was over 100% steeper. I think that section is like 25%, and this is approaching 50. So at any rate, it in terms of visual, if it wasn't for the snow and the fact there was no leaves on the trees, it really wasn't an inspiring area to be in. It was kind of like that day with the weather. Yeah, right. You know, I couldn't imagine. Obviously, I would not do this hike in the spring. I would not do it in the heat of summer, particularly in bug season. There was a lot of beech whips and hobble bush down low. Later on, those became your friends as it got so steep that you would use those basically as handholds to help stabilize you and pull you uphill. But probably the joy of that hike was whenever you would turn around and look behind you, you would just look across Woodland Valley, and you could actually see Plattekill ski area.
Oh, nice.
In the distance. Yeah, I mean the views with no leaves on the trees. Again, that was the highlight of the trip. And I think the quote of the trip, there's when it comes to like trail talk, there were 2 fun moments. One was when I think the total ascent up that slope was 1,800 feet. And when we had bitten off about 500 feet and we were, we still had quite a ways to go, at least 1,200 feet to go. We started talking about food and what we were going to go and get after the hike. And normally you don't have that talk until you're like descending from your last mountain of the day. But here we weren't even halfway up the first mountain of the day, and we're already talking about going out to eat afterwards. The hike, by the way,
pretty scary, actually.
Yeah. Well, it was a long hike, and it just got steeper and steeper. And so as we got further up that slope, and I'm leading, Dave has asked me how much further, which in our terms refers to how much more vertical feet do we have to climb to get to the summit. And so I told him we were about 300 vert away, but I commented to him, but don't look up. And he's like, why? And the reason why you shouldn't look up, man, is because once you get towards, and I have the elevation profile from Gaia, but as you get closer to the summit of Cornell, it gets steeper and steeper. And then you reach the crown, which is almost like a ridge that goes around the summit. But yeah, it from where my standpoint, he was further down slope, but from my standpoint, it was somewhat intimidating. All in all, I can't, in terms of navigation, it wasn't very technical at all. You could see what was ahead of you, which made it easy to pick your line and stay away from areas that you didn't want to get into. We made the trail on Cornell just uphill of the crack. So once we got on trail, it was evident that there was a lot of trail traffic that day. Snowshoes Trail was packed down. It was smooth all the way to that little summit area. We checked out the lookout behind the summit. Then we made our way on trail over to Wittenberg, and we got to Wittenberg pretty late in the day. So we got some of that nice, orange-ish sunsetting cloud looking over the Ashokan. And then we made our way down to the parking area at Woodland Valley. Unfortunately, it was past my bewitching time when we got to the car, so I had to make a beeline home. And overall, it was a respectable hike. So my question is, whenever I do hikes like that, I ask myself, would I do it again?
Right.
Yeah, because I wasn't really in the type 2 fun zone on this one. It was strenuous and it was a long day. And
was it cold? Like the weather wise? Was
no,
it kind of like?
Yeah, we would have liked it to be at least 15 to 20 degrees colder. We would have liked to have seen more ice in that stream bed, so we could have played in the stream going uphill further than we did. But with relatively high water and not a lot of ice cover, we didn't do as much exploration going up that stream as we wanted to. And I'll say this, going uphill, I was working hard enough that literally, if you can imagine, my compass hanging on a lantern off my neck was all like steamy or foggy by just being next to my body. Yeah. And when we got to the trick is once we got to the summit and hit the trail, we didn't bundle up right away because we're under trees, and we kind of walk off that wetness as we got over the summit lookout area. And then we layered up there, changed our gloves because by then our gloves were all wetted out, and made our way over to Cornell. Going down the crack, for those of you who are interested, it was a piece of cake. The crack wasn't all packed in. It wasn't iced up, so you could get your boot in there really well. And, going down, it was a breeze. Trail was packed all the way. We had hill sounds on all the way down to the park. Well, not to the parking area, to the camping area, and then we took them off. So it was a long day. And I guess, like I started to say, would I do this hike again? Yeah, I could see myself doing it again, either on a colder winter day or in the fall. I'm not sure. Maybe
right.
Not. Yeah. I hate to say this, but I wasn't all that inspired by the forest. It was a typical, Catskill upper mountain hardwood forest on the one hand. On the other hand, we weren't on the ridge proper, and the ridge proper was either spruce or hemlock trees. And that would have been, I think, in my opinion, it would have been a more enjoyable hike. But I think Davis said he had gone up and down that a few times. So it's on my list, but he checked it off of his. So for those of you who are ever interested in hiking up that ridge on Cornell, message me. Maybe we can do it.
Yeah. It's just, I've been up that way, and I think the boulders are a little kind of discouraging. Like, it just kind of makes it a little bit. This was during the fall, so we're talking about wet leaves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, it kind of fucking makes it a bitch.
Yeah. So to compare this to the Van Ben Schoten, it was steeper for a longer stretch than the Van Ben Schoten. The Van Ben Schoten does not have any of the boulder cover that this route has.
Yeah, right.
You have a couple small washed out sections on the Van Ben Schoten, but you're kind of like putting across them. You're traversing them as opposed to running with them. This was just a huge talus field of angular boulders with voids in between them. Going down slope on this would be a pain. Going uphill, you couldn't see where your foot placement was because of the snow, and I was really paying attention to where my toe placement was because I had my hill sounds on, and my hope and expectation is that once I planted my toe, it wouldn't slip. And if it did slip, you were going to face plant into the mountain.
Right. Yeah.
Because your face was, at times you were really that close to it going uphill. But overall, what Davis and I, we had a good time, a lot of laughs. And it was an interesting area to explore, but I necessarily would not go out of my way to do it again. but then again, I could find myself over there again someday. I don't know.
You never know. You never know. Somebody might ask you and you'd be like, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah, there's better ways to get up Cornell than this way. But this, honestly, in terms of being super technical, in terms of rock ledges and navigation, it wasn't. It wasn't any of that. It was just steep, and you couldn't see the holes, the voids between the rocks, which was an issue. You had to definitely make sure that you were putting your foot down on what was going to be a hard surface underneath, as opposed to just like throwing your foot out in front of you and leaning into it, not knowing if you're going to be on solid footing or not. That would have been dangerous.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
It was good.
It was
good. Yeah, it was good. And it was probably better than this. Did I tell you I'm drinking this bourbon barrel aged this stout, which is good. Okay.
Oatmeal. Yeah. All right. Catskill News, volunteer 3500 Club, New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, Catskill Trail Crew, Catskill Mountain Club, Visitor Center, Jolly Rovers Trail Crew, Brilliant Mountain Fire Tower. If you need stickers, let me know. Send me an email or through social media. I'll get a hold of you ASAP, and then we can send them out to you as soon as possible. Weather forecast. So we usually talk about the weekend, but tonight we're recording Tuesday, and it looks like Wednesday we're getting a pretty significant amount of snow here in the Catskills. It looks like on Slide Mountain, the forecast has a prediction of over 6 inches of snow. So pretty crazy. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it looks to be mostly clear skies with temperatures high of reaching throughout those whole 4 days of 16 degrees, with a low of reaching at night -24. So snowshoes, layers. So that's all I got to say. Looks to be a great weekend to get out and about. Once again, snowshoes, spikes, pack them now, because we're talking about snow and ice. You can't tell what you're going to bring. Bring everything. Just bring everything. So last set of sponsors, and then we'll get on to Lucy. Sounds good. So discover Camp Catskill in Townsville, your ultimate hiking store. Find top quality gear, apparel, and accessories for all your outdoor adventures. Our expert staff is here to help every hiker, from beginner to seasoned pros. We also carry a unique variety of Catskill souvenirs and gifts. Visit us online at campcatskill.co or in the store to gear up for your next journey. Adventure starts at Camp Catskill. Also, embark on transforming the journey with Another Summit. Another Summit is dedicated to serving veterans and first responders with free outdoor activities. Activities like walks in nature, paddling, hiking, and even backpacking. Join our supportive community to rejuvenate in nature's embrace. Experience camaraderie, adventure, and healing at no cost. Take your next step with Another Summit and ascend to new heights of resilience and joy. Apply today on anothersummit.org. All right, so let's get on to the guest of the night.
Let's go.
So tonight, Lucy Sante joins us, right? Is that how it?
Yep, you got it.
Lucy Sante. God, once again, Lucy, every time we have a different guest, like every other guest, I screw up their last name. So forgive me. That's why this podcast is real. It's real. All right. I don't think, but tonight, Lucy joins us, who does a deep dive into the history behind her book, 19 Reservoirs, a powerful look into the towns and communities and lives displaced during New York City's water system that was built. We explore the background of her books and her stories of how she found out about this information of the 19 reservoirs and how it came about and all the amazing, crazy history that has happened behind the reservoir creation. So, Lucy, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. How about first, before we get into the reservoirs, your book, stuff like that, give a little background to the listeners about yourself. Go all in, whatever you want to do.
Okay, I was born in Belgium in 1954, immigrated with my parents in the early 60s. I lived in New Jersey until I could get away, which was in 1972 when I went to Columbia, and I stayed in New York City until the end of the century. Then I got a job at teaching at Bard College and moved upstate in 2000. Before that, I'd spent 5 summers in a row, 6 summers in a row in Delaware County, in Bloomville, in Hobart, and eventually bought a house in Roxbury. So I was near the Papacton Reservoir for those 6 years. And I used to live at the end on a road that ended with the spillway of the Ashokan. So I was very close to that. Now I live in Kingston proper. But anyway, it's been a quarter of a century. This area has seeped into my bones.
So that's actually near me. I live in Oneonta, so you're pretty close to me, like 35, 40 minutes. So is that kind of living up there kind of what brought you into your kind of thoughts about the reservoir? You're wanting to deep dive into the reservoirs?
Of course, especially because when I was there in the 1990s, I rented or owned houses from between 1994 and 1999. It was a time when there were still a lot of living survivors from the villages had been emptied and razed to build the Papacton Reservoir. And, I subscribed to the local Bugle, and they had, reminiscent stories in there. They would show up with self-published books at, the farmers market, and they'd have reunions, they'd show home movies. There was this kind of air of permanent mourning that hung over the place, especially since, Delaware County, at least at the time, there's been a lot more immigration from the city, et cetera, since then. But then it was pretty locked in. Generally speaking, most people had been in their family houses for over a century. And communities were very clannish, very established. So if you got, evicted from Shavertown and wound up in Andes or wound up in, Margaretville, you were from outside and you remained that way, as not only were you mourning this place, but you couldn't find a foothold in a new one. This existential dilemma that overtook all these people.
Wow. And now all this, like you're visiting all these different places and hearing all this stuff kind of brought you into writing this book of 19 reservoirs, correct?
Well, especially the first summer I was up there was a drought year. And somebody said, if you go down to the Papacton, you'll start to see church steeples poking up. And I believed them, but the image, even though I quickly learned better, because of course they burned all the buildings and even removed the ashes, the image of those steeples poking through just sent a chill down my spine, and it still does. Anyway, I wrote the book partly as a consequence of the COVID epidemic, pandemic. Because the Y closed, and so to get exercise, I started walking all over, and I just started reappreciating this area so much more. I really felt connected to it. So when I got an offer to write something for this for Places Journal, which was a California-based online magazine about architecture and society and urban planning and things like that. I immediately thought of this idea of the reservoirs, which has been in the back of my mind for 30 years. And I was doing this in the middle of the pandemic, so all the libraries and museums were closed. I had to do this from the handful of books that exist and newspaper archives. I love newspaper archives. They are filled with treasure.
I mean, back then, like a newspaper, they went all out and they didn't care what they said or whatever they said. They did whatever they wanted.
More or less, depending on who is running the thing.
True.
So, Lucy, where was it that you would do your newspaper researching? I presume it's online, but what portal or
Well,
search?
I had three main sources.
Mhm.
The New York Times Index, and I think it's called Hudson Valley Newspapers, where I found the Kingston Freeman and the Catskill Mountain News, as well as a few smaller papers, but those were the big three. And I borrowed somebody's newspapers.com account, which is very expensive, to look at the daily news.
So you were approached by some firm, the Places Journal, to write this book. Why is it they approach you? I take it you've written other books. Why don't you tell us about those? And
Well, I was approached by them because an old friend of mine had just become an editor there. And well, anyway, I've been writing professionally since 1981. I published my first book 10 years later, which is Low Life, which, it gets called a crime and vice history of New York City, but I think of it as a poor people's history of New York City. And I've gone on to write a similar book about Paris, and in which I didn't spend that much time, but it's like my imaginary home. And then I wrote a book called The Factory of Facts, which is about where I come from, which is to say Belgium and my family and my region of Belgium, my city. So I've written about all the places where I've lived. I even wrote an article about New Jersey once. So this is, for me, this is another such book. I mean, I feel very connected to this place now, and this book reflects it.
so how similar or dissimilar is your book 19 Reservoirs to Low Life or Factory of Facts? In what respect is it, approach the topic from the same or similar perspective or differently?
Well, I mean, it's all through me, right? My eyes. Gee, each one brings its own vocabulary, method of organization, because they're, all such different subjects. When I'm writing about the town where I was born, my history goes back 1,000 years. Same thing with Paris. New York begins for me, well, that book begins around 1840. The Reservoirs is a clear narrative that begins, well, it sort of begins at the beginning of the 19th century and picks up steam around the beginning of the 20th, and then runs until like 1967 with this, absolutely clear march of events. And that I don't have with my other books, which range much more broadly across multiple subjects.
But there's other topics relevant to the Catskills. We have the tanning industry. We have the rent wars that occurred in the Catskills. We have the Hardenberg patent and development of the Hardenberg patent. So there's a lot of different topics pertinent to the Catskills that you could have chosen to write about. Why the reservoirs? Why was that topic appealing to you?
Well, years and years ago, I was a movie critic, and I wrote for a monthly, so I could really only write about like one or two movies. And so I'd see 30 movies and had to pick which one. I realized right away that what makes for a good review is not if you really like the movie or if you hated it. The good review is going to come from the movie that presents you with a problem, that you don't know where you're going to go, that you have to fight it out on the page. And this was I mean, all those other topics are fascinating, but they don't present the kind of moral problem, for one thing, the kind of unresolvable conflict that the reservoir system presents with regard to New York City as well as to the Catskills. It's a seesaw. One group was going to benefit at the expense of the other. And New York City kind of had to win because it had the most people, frankly. But nevertheless, they might have had the overall moral advantage, but their behavior was in the cellar. They behaved abominably throughout from the 19th century right up until the late 1960s. They were terrible. Nevertheless, I compare it to the trolley problem. You're standing at a switch and you see a trolley car headed for 7 people tied up on the tracks. Do you do nothing, or do you divert it onto another track which has one person tied up? Meaning that you can either do nothing and allow the deaths of 7 people, or act and spare them, but directly cause the death of another. It's that very same kind of paradox that rules over the reservoir system.
So that's kind of a utilitarian view of the moral dilemma. I want to think that maybe it was not that New York City had more people, but there was more money in it if New York City won, because by damming up and impounding all this water in the Catskills, New York City got to grow. And with that growth, people made millions, if not billions of dollars eventually off the development of the 5 boroughs and what was possible by clean drinking water. But before we go down that road, I just have a little aside, knowing now that you're a movie critic. When we talk about Netflix, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and the merger, or you don't want to go there? I'm seeing Lucy's giving the sign. Don't want to go down that trail.
Well, I'm horrified by it, but I don't want to get into a discussion because that kind of stuff gives me a headache. That's all.
Okay.
Shit is hitting the fan. So, with all this talk about the reservoir and stuff like that, you wrote 19 reservoirs. You want to give us a little quick rundown of 19 reservoirs, what it's about, stuff like that? I mean, we kind of generally did a little bit of it, but give us a breakdown of 19 reservoirs, what the book is about, so our listeners can go out and purchase it. And I suggest you do, because it's absolutely fascinating, Lucy. I've read it. This is my 3rd time reading it. I love it.
Thank you. Well, what it is it's a chronological rundown of New York City and its growing need for water and what they did about it, and begins in around 1800 with the first dam in New York City. Remember that the city's been continuously occupied for more than a century and a half by then. But there were wells, there were ponds, there were streams, all of which were either used up or befouled. So they had to start bringing water in from elsewhere, which they did finally in the 1820s. And they built the Croton Reservoir in Westchester County. And that quickly grew to a chain of 13 reservoirs on the east side of the river, which are called the Croton system. But those were all small, and they were completely insufficient. And by the beginning of the 20th century, actually, it was already predicted, including the exact place for the dam was foreseen by a scientist writing in a Scientific American in 1888. He predicted that there would be a dam at Olive Bridge in Ulster County, which is exactly where the first dam was placed. And then after 1900, things quicken up. The Papacton Reservoir starts, just before 1910, and is complete by before the American intervention in World War One. Then they've planned all these other reservoirs. They planned um, Neversink and Rondout, which are basically receiving reservoirs. But those don't get finished until the early 50s because of the Depression and the war. Pipacton comes in the early 50s. Oh, I'm forgetting Gilboa, which is northwest of the Ashokan Reservoir, and that is built around 1920. And as the book reveals, that's the one that caused the greatest active resistance among the villagers. So then Pipacton, and finally Cannonsville, which runs through the 60s until 1967. And along the way, there are all kinds of side stories, people being screwed out of their properties by the city commissions, etc. And there's a kind of counter narrative that runs through it too, which is this matter proposed by the New York Times in 1860, which is that the city should start installing water meters to control the use of water, or at least to like bill people for what they use in water. And this was successfully fought for so long that finally there wasn't a plurality of buildings fully metered until this century. They gave up on the remaining buildings in 2006. And when you think about it, how much they could have saved in water if they put in meters a long time ago. And yeah, you brought up that it's there's lots of people in New York City and they need to drink water and flush their toilet and take their showers, but the main engine driver was industry, of course. This term that struck me when they refer to the city having a water famine, and water famine sounds like it means there's no water for baby to drink, but actually it specifically referred to there not being sufficient water pressure to bring water up to the upper stories of high rises, which would cripple everything. And anyway, so that's a story. It's a story of large scale movement and small scale repercussion. I focus as much as I can, as many stories as I could round up from these sources of, individual experience. I always want to know what things felt like. There are images that are so haunting to me, that in the latter stages of the Ashokan building, every night there would be these gigantic bonfires that sent flames up hundreds of feet into the air. And meanwhile, former residents of these villages had to ask for directions because they didn't recognize anything anymore.
Wow.
Or all the grieving that accompanied the closings of the villages that went under in the Pipacton Reservoir, the last delivery at the post office, the last Christmas pageant, all those very, very sentimental things. The Catskill Mountain News printed a full page of small photographs of houses in Shavertown saying, do any of these bring up your emotions? And of course they would for almost everybody. It was a very small town. Yeah, it's a heartbreaking story. And of course you have to realize that, yeah, it's true that people use less water now. Humans. We buy bottled water, which comes from God knows where, of course. But, there's low flow toilets and there's, generally plumbing is much better shape than it was in the past, etc. But at the same time, water is becoming an endangered resource.
Yeah.
through being used up to being privatized by these people who are selling us bottled water, for one thing, and the next time it happens that New York City is in dire straits and somehow all those reservoirs aren't sufficient to bring it up to speed, what are they going to do?
Well,
Tap the
that's yeah.
Adirondacks, dam the Hudson, or as they proposed in 1967, dam Long Island Sound? It's
That's a
crazy.
good idea. So Lucy, what about going back to water metering? Do I understand that at the present time, not all buildings in New York City have water meters?
That's right. There's a certain category of buildings, which basically, it's every time I'd read a story in the Times about water meters over the decades, and even including like right up to, I think the last one I found was in 2006, the numbers shift.
Mm-hmm.
They're never the
Yeah.
same number from one story to another. So I don't know, but it appears that there's some buildings that just held out somewhere in the
Mm-hmm.
five boroughs, unspecified,
Yeah.
but there is a certain number of buildings that just never got metered and the city gave up.
Yeah. It's probably that people with money push back on having to put meters on their building, and that monetary line of resistance is probably where that policy making came to an end. I'm going to steal this question from Stosh. I have two here. Actually, I'm going to ask mine, and then Stosh can go to his about the Cannonsville Reservoir. But if consumption continues to increase in the boroughs and fresh water remains a scarcity, what do you think the probability of damming the Delaware River would be?
Well, there you've got a problem because, well, the Delaware has been a problem all along. First of all, the city had already scoped out the Delaware Valley or the upper Delaware Valley, the East Branch and the West Branch, as being reservoir sources as far back as before World War One. But the problem there, which was resolved by a treaty and then undone, and there's all kinds of machinations over the years, the problem was that it shares the Delaware River with New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Delaware too, for that matter. And so there's been a lot of the initial grant that the city wanted was first of all diminished by the state Supreme Court, or by the U.S. Supreme Court. And then after further complaints from New Jersey and Pennsylvania, was reduced yet again. So it's just a permanent matter of contention. And if you ever dam the Delaware altogether, New York City won't get that much of it.
Because it's allocated to other states.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they have most of the frontage. We've got the source of the sources, plural, of the Delaware, but not very much mileage.
Yeah. So I suppose it's because the Hudson River and the Schoharie River basically start and terminate in New York State. That's why the city and the state of New York can take all the water they want from those water courses. But when it comes to the Delaware, there's the rights of other states. And I guess that's where I hand it off to Stosh.
Oh, interesting. So, so I mean, at the times, do you think like the compensation we're talking about, going back then to the start of this, where all the reservoirs were thought about being built, and then all of a sudden New York City state comes in and says, hey, we're taking over your homes. This is what we're compensating for your houses for. It's what we're giving you for your houses. As I read in your book, that felt, I mean, at the time it was the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it was what, like $10,000 for your house and your land. And then that was it. And then you got to get the hell out of there. Correct? That's a ripoff, right?
Yeah, $10,000. I mean, that's a large sum in those days, really. And that would be not just for a house, it would be for a house, substantial acreage, an orchard, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, that was the deal. These three-person panels were composed of one person from the city, one from the county, and one from somewhere else in the state. But they were instructed to offer no more than like something like 20%. And then there would be an arbitrator who'd bump it up a bit. But everybody ended up getting ripped off.
Wow. And like this just happened everywhere. We're first starting with the Ashokan, and then what do we hit next? The Delaware, Gilboa. So
And
that
then,
you I mean we might as well bring into that. It ties into this. You said that the Schoharie Reservoir, Gilboa Reservoir area received the most resistance. Why is that? What happened up there?
well, for one thing, it was really like one village sitting on the site of the dam. And it wasn't a huge village, but somehow, partly it was that they'd seen the Ashokan happen just a few years earlier, and they were appalled that so many people were driven from their homes. And so, people tried to, like, they'd like get all their furniture out of their house, but then they'd like seal themselves up in it
Wow.
so that, the house couldn't be torn down with them in it. So there would be various ruses to get them out of the house, and when that happened, their house would be set on fire.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was this New York Times article a few years after 1922, where it talked about the devastation of Gilboa. It's a little bit exaggerated. It makes it sound like this complete catastrophe happened, because he suggests this large portion of the residents of Gilboa died of heartbreak. And, we don't know. We can't know. What about PTSD? We don't have a record of suicides. We don't know what happened to most of these people. We can follow how much they were paid, and that's about it. We have statistics on how many people moved north, east, south, or west, but nothing about the specifics.
Right. Yeah, good point. I mean, very good point. A lot of these people, might have had, like you said, PTSD, depression, stuff like that after moving out of the place they've been in for, like we said, since like the Hardenberg patent happened. Their family might have been there for that long of a time. And, now all of a sudden they're like, hey, we're going to give you $10,000. You got to get the fuck out, or, you're screwed. And once again, it's no holds bar podcast. This podcast is a real podcast, Lucy. That's why I go all in. And that's I've always been interested about these reservoir talks because that's big. We've seen with the drought. I sent you that video, Lucy, of me going down to what was that place that I saw? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. No, it was the Pacton, but the town. What was it?
Right.
The former town.
Arena, right?
Arena, and just seeing like the foundations and be like, oh my God, like this shit's still here. Like, how is this happening? And then once again, they were paid $10,000, or a little bit more, a little bit less, depending what you said on their acreage, what you had on your land, farm crops, stuff like that. And then they're just like, get out of here, or we're going to dam this place up and you're going to be flooded, or we're going to set your house on fire. That's crazy. Hence why you wrote the book. It's crazy. Yeah. And your book definitely goes all in on that. And like what I'm getting into right now, again, the third time reading the book is we're talking about, you are getting into how crazy it was with the workers and stuff. Ted, sorry, I stole away. I'm passionate about this. Sorry. Forgive me.
That's okay, Stosh. Don't worry, though. The DEC or the DEP is not coming to take your house anytime soon, Stosh. So, Lucy, I have a hunch. You can tell me if I'm correct or not. It's early 1900s. I own 100 acres where the Ashokan Reservoir is going to be created. And I'm a farmer. I'm a really good farmer. And what I'm growing is I have some dairy cows and I have a lot of fruit trees.
No dairy cows.
Oh, I have some dairy cows, but I'm more into growing fruit and vegetables, but I have these fruit trees, maybe some grapevines. And I point that out because it's important, I think, to understand that if that's the type of farming you're doing, you can't take your money that the city gives you and buy an orchard.
No.
You have to plant those trees, and it takes a few years before they become productive. Am I right?
Totally.
And so
At least those people got compensated per tree, you know.
okay.
I
So
mean,
but on the other hand, say you were owned a bluestone quarry, you were out of luck. They didn't give you anything for that.
oh, wow. No shit. And that was big, because New York City was
Yeah.
building all their sidewalks and their roads and stuff with bluestone.
That's because they had this payment schedule that, allowed for like acreages of crops or, numbers of fruit trees, but did not make any allowance for the use of the land value itself.
For
And
its
that also
minerals
meant
and
that people who had like boarding houses were not compensated for their business. They only got paid for the house, period.
Wow. Unbelievable. Now, what about Ted? I think you could handle this next question. What about the fees that came across with this?
yeah. So did you find any instances where the locals whose communities were taken over, in succession as these reservoirs were built, that at some point in time, kind of like we see now with ICE protest, that they got smarter in their ability to organize and oppose the city's actions, or was it they were just overwhelmed by the might and the power of the city as the city went from one reservoir site to the next?
Absolutely. I mean, before the war, before World War II, these places, these villages were really like, rural Americana. And so if there was a lawyer in the county, they might be doing deeds and registering births. But that was about the size of it. They were in no shape to combat the city. And even in Ulster County, where you had a strong legal resistance against the Ashokan at first by the Kuykendalls, who owned the railroad, the Ulster and Delaware. They mounted stiff legal challenge to the city, but they got shot down immediately. After the war, things shifted a bit. There were more lawyers upstate, for one thing. And the really important one was this guy named Herman Gottfried, who'd actually been an employee of the water department at their place in Kingston here, and then quit and switched sides and started representing property owners for first the Papacton and then the Cannonsville reservoirs. And, so that there was, they finally legal actions. Well, legal actions beginning with the very end of the Ashokan Reservoir. Finally, there's this woman who sued and kept suing all the way up the chain before suddenly dying, apparently. But she won. And that's when they started compensating people for loss of business. But that wasn't until they were just about done with the Ashokan at that point. Everybody had already been paid off. So that didn't apply until the later reservoirs.
Yeah. So what if any support did the local landowners and business owners get from the county of Ulster, the county of Delaware? Did the county government itself muster up any opposition to oppose the city in its efforts to take land and build the reservoirs? Or was the county government basically, complicit with the city and went along with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of speech making. All these projects were decried, resistance was vowed, and then they folded because they didn't have any power. They finally got their own back in a few cases, though, when because the city was really bad at paying its taxes, and they actually, almost got to the point of putting first the Ashokan and then the Papacton up for sale. And the city finally paid its dues, Yeah, I mean, there wasn't much the local people could do. They didn't have the lawyers, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the strength. It wasn't quite at the Mayberry level that the villages were at, but it wasn't much better.
Well, now a lot of the communities down more down south of we're talking about the Ulster and stuff like that, seeing this as a progress. Bringing more water to New York City, gaining New York City a little bit bigger because now we're cleaner and stuff. But in your view in the book, you claim this as definitely a big, huge cost to the Catskills in the area. Now, what in your eyes? Of course, we and people like us, we see this as a loss because houses were gone, communities were gone, people got displaced, stuff like that. Can you explain that how instead of being progress, this was actually a regress because what happened up here?
Yeah, I mean, it's the perspective of the observer, I mean,
True.
and in my book, I mean, I have been a resident of both, been up here for a quarter of a century, and I was in New York City for almost 30 years. So I can see both. It's a tragedy from the perspective of upstate, and it's a victory from the perspective of the city, and I try to represent both as best as I could.
It's tough, it's tough. We have people coming up here bringing their tourism up to the Catskills, Adirondacks, stuff like that. We have 7-8 million people down there in New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world, one of the most beautiful cities in the world and stuff. But also, we have, I mean, these reservoirs are beautiful. I always love hiking and seeing the reservoirs. But that time of when I visited Arena and saw that there was once a church here,
Yeah.
that there's this massive chimney poking out of the middle of nowhere that I'm like, what the hell is this? It makes you think. And then reading your book shows it's seriously like what my sense is like, basically they're like, here's some money, get the fuck out,
Mhm.
but bring up your dead bodies. You got to do it yourself and then get out of here. Sorry. Like it's just,
Yeah, yeah.
but I understand at the same time, like it's back and forth. It's crazy. I think one of the not the last question I have, but the last question before I hand it over to Tad is I'm at that part in your book again that talks about the fatalities when creating this reservoir. Like there's a lot of fatalities. You talk about dynamites, construction, slips, falls, stuff like that. But there's no record of it, correct?
Absolutely. I could not find one anywhere.
Wow. What the hell?
And I mean, the Kingston Freeman did record quite a lot of these, but unsystematically. You figure that, they heard about one, so they wrote it up, but they might not have heard about three others.
Wow.
But the city wasn't keeping count. The contractor might have kept count, but we'll never know because, that's not public record. So, yeah, no, I was very struck by that.
So how many people were employed to build this? So you said the Shokin started off with 6,000?
Something like that. I'm really bad with remembering numbers, and I don't have my book at my elbow. But there was 6,000. It was they built a whole city, which they didn't do for the other reservoirs, really. It was a city, it had part of it was funded by this Italian Immigrants Association, which built a school. Because there were children, there were families, there were lots of people, especially from Eastern Europe and Russia, who were brought straight up from Ellis Island, couldn't speak a word of English.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the book that it was Italians. What else did you say again?
Well, Scandinavians, Swedes, and Norwegians, and Finns, and Russians, and Poles,
and they all separated each other, of course, and then there was a lot of fighting and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they brought families and stuff. So we're talking about 6,000 people coming up to the Ashokan area, which is basically at the time, I don't even know the population, 200-300. and Olive Bridge had probably even less than that. And,
Like 200-300.
in Olive Bridge, yeah. Are we talking about
In
less?
Olive Bridge, yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the
I thought you said
population.
also, yeah.
Oh no, and then like seeing these massive amounts of people and then starting to build the whole this, it's got to be absolutely insane. And then once again, you talk about the deaths not really recorded. That's pretty intense. Did they start doing that, recording the deaths after the Ashokan, like Schoharie, like
I never
Delaware?
saw any statistics for those either, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Oh wow. So
Well, and remember that in general, statistics, statistics were a fiction anyways, we know, but they're a preoccupation of our time. And I mean, it's always been you tout the statistics that are good for you. So they're not talking about numbers of injuries or deaths. They're talking about, number of pounds of tons of multi-tons of stone being used in the facing, stuff like that. That's the kind of statistics they want to hit you with. It's bragging with statistics. So, and as far as like, the responsibility to the public record, that didn't, stuff like that really, like much of it didn't start until the 1960s when you had a lot of crusading journalists. And of course, that's slipping away from us even as we speak.
yeah, correct. Crazy stuff. So,
All right, Lucy, I got a problem. Okay. You said that the city's behavior was in the cellar.
Mm-hmm.
Do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, I don't know where I got that phrase from. But
Don't roll your eyes. I mean, that's a fair description from somebody who's written many books. Their behavior was in the cellar. But
Ted, let me remember. Do you remember what they used to call downtown Manhattan back in the old 1800s? What did they call that? Do you remember?
New Amsterdam. No, before the 1800s, it was New Amsterdam.
It's called the Swamp.
The Swamp.
Oh. So in the cellar, that's where all the sewage, all the bad water, stuff like that, garbage went.
That's true. Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah. So the cellar kind of fits it.
Yeah. Did you have that in mind, Lucy, when you referred to the city's behaviors in the cellar?
Probably I got that term from baseball scores.
Oh, okay.
The Padres are in the cellar again this year.
Gotcha.
Sure.
So, but I also remember you saying that it more or less unwinded or came to an end in the 60s. Is that true?
Oh, that was the last time they built a reservoir. That's what I'm talking about.
So I'm somewhat familiar with the leaks of the Delaware Aqueduct and all of the flooding that's occurred in Warsing. Are you familiar with that?
Well, I'm not sure, actually. I don't know about the leak in the aqueduct. I was thinking about the disaster of Pennsville, but
that's your next book. Okay.
No, I'm not going there again.
Well, you should go there again because
I can only write one book about one subject, and then
this is a whole new character and flavor of New York City administration and government going back to visit the cellar again. And what had happened is people in Wawarsing, which is in between the foot for our listeners, between the foot of the foot of the Catskills on the east and the Schwangunk Ridge on the Catskills on the west, the Schwangunk Ridge on the east lies Wawarsing, and underneath it goes the Delaware Aqueduct, and apparently as much as 35 million gallons a day will leak from the Delaware Aqueduct. A lot of that in the town of Wawarsing, where there's about 50 homes would be flooded. 50 homes would be flooded. People started experiencing this in or around 2008, and it wasn't until 2012 that the city of New York said, yup, it's probably our aqueduct. But up until then, they resisted this. as if there was some other aqueduct going through the town of Wawarsing that was leaking water. Maybe it was going to Delaware or to Philadelphia. No, I guess that couldn't be true. It could only be the city of New York, but it took them at least 4 years to convince the city, or for them to admit that it was their aqueduct that was leaking. And up until last year, 2024, they were still working on fixing it.
Wow.
And they weren't any more fair when it came to paying people for their economic losses than they were 100 years ago when they were taking land for the Ashokan.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. The same stuff. If you were living in a house and the city's denying that they're flooding your basement every fucking day, your basement floods and the city says it's not us.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
They tried to blame it on some glacial aquifer in that area. Right. Yeah. Doesn't pass the, the smell test. So at any rate, so people would sell their houses at a loss just to get out of there because they couldn't take it anymore, right? So you buy a house maybe in the 70s, in the 80s, you pay market at that time. But in or around 2010, you're fed up with your basement flooding all the time, the property damage, your backyard being a swamp. You sell it at a loss, but you can't make a claim against the city of New York because you're no longer a property owner. And then it still takes them years upon years to start implementing the fix, because it is pretty difficult, because the problem is when you start to throttle back on the amount of water they're transporting through these aqueducts each day, it's not just the city of New York, but there's other communities upstate that will draw on one aqueduct, but not the other. So they had, I think it was a period of like 5 years that communities like New Paltz had to put in additional municipal wells because they would no longer be able to supplement their existing water supply with water from the city of New York. So it was like,
I didn't even realize they did. I mean, most of the river towns take from the Hudson.
correct.
What Ewan does, Poughkeepsie does,
Yeah, but would you drink Hudson River water? I mean, it's contaminated by General Electric and PCBs.
Bingo,
Yeah, so
You know about it.
Yeah, it's a big problem. So yeah, I just, as much as the city of New York says, hey, we've tried to do right by people upstate, I can't say so. And so one of the things I looked at is, and this is just a little lean in for your book, this will whet your appetite, that when the city of New York was saying in 2008 that these flooded houses in Wawarsing are not our problem, and that the median household value in Wawarsing at the time was at or around 100,000, and if 50 homes were impacted by these leaks, that's about $5 million of property value. And in 2008, the city of New York's budget was $59 billion. So had they written a check to these people for the fair value of their home in 2008, it would have represented 85 1,000ths of a percent of the city budget. Not even 1/10%, not even 100th% of the city budget. And they still fought these people tooth and nail. So what do you think, Lucy?
Is it similar to the Ashokan, the reservoir stuff?
Yeah. Are you going to write a book about this?
I'm not going to write a book about this, but somebody should,
Yeah. Stosh and I will.
Nah, I can't write
absolutely. This is made for you guys. Come on.
I mean, Tad, you can do that. I mean, you seem passionate about that little.
I got a podcast to worry about, Stosh. You're the one that can read the 19 Reservoirs book 3 times. Is your goal to read it 19 times?
Challenge accepted.
All right.
I will read it 19 times. So
you have to take the book to each of the reservoirs and read the section about that reservoir on site.
There you go.
Challenge accepted. All right. I will take pictures. So now, a lot of your book, of course, about the reservoirs, we keep talking about that. So, what do you think is more impressive with your research about the reservoirs? The engineering behind all this back in the early 1900s, we're talking about building dams, the flow of the aqueduct and stuff, or the fact that nowadays you can't get shit done in 50 years without 200 meetings and stuff.
Hmm.
The fact that they got it done within, years and years, 2, 3 years of meetings, be like, let's do this. And nowadays, to cut down a tree in the Catskills, it's going to take at least 12 years to do.
Yeah, I mean, you had all these regulatory agencies, which you didn't have back then. It's the bureaucracy. I mean, bureaucracy in everything. It's like I taught at this college for 24 years, and I saw the number of assistant vice presidents grow from like, one to like 30. It's just like a natural law or something that bureaucracy just cobwebs all over the place. And so there's so many agencies that control this and that and the other thing, which simply did not exist when they built the Ashokan, especially. That it was nothing like that. In fact, the the body that administers water in the city of New York changed its name like 5 times. It's as I love my own phrase here. They changed names as many times as the Parisian Vice Squad. They were hiding shit, and there were constant like corruption scandals. Of course, corruption scandals exist in every part of New York City, in housing and in the police. Come on. So, corruption are us. So big surprise. And the larger bureaucracy you have, the more inefficient but corruption is. So suddenly, like, you don't know which of these 200 people you have to pay off. I'm sure that, by the way, going back to that question about whether the county did anything, I'm certain there were payoffs. Obviously, there's no accounting of this. And I would invite some historically minded investigative reporter to maybe try looking into this, although it's been some time. But I do think that people were paid off.
Interesting. And you find of course, the engineering when you research this stuff was absolutely phenomenal at the time, 1900s. Like, unbelievable that this could happen. We're talking about the aqueduct, the dam, stuff like that. It's just amazing.
No, it was a period, I mean, this is after, it was kind of contemporaneous with the Suez Canal, these giant projects are in the Grand Canal in China. And, oh golly, of course there was the Panama Canal as well. So, and some of the engineers who worked on Ashokan worked on these other canals. So they had experience. They'd seen massive projects going on. So, they did. I mean, they did a pretty remarkable job.
Yeah.
I mean, the only one of these reservoirs that has subsequently presented serious problems is Cannonsville, the last one to be built.
Really?
How so?
Not entirely sure why, but for example, I think I forget what it was. I think it might be early in this century that the ring road collapsed and sent 7 cars crashing down below and killed 8 people or something like that. And multiple floods.
Oh yeah.
It was with the structure of the reservoir itself, which didn't happen with any of the others.
Mm-hmm. Cannonsville is like basically a backup reservoir, and then facing Downsville, that's a tough flow. We're talking about the floods and stuff like that. Downsville is, below it 100 feet, and we have it's a small town, but that could be destroyed instantly by floods.
Downsville. Yeah, I mean, one of the first pages of my book is a photo postcard from 1933 of the flood in Downsville that year. And you're literally seeing just roofs poking up over the water.
Oh,
and that's
unbelievable.
Before they built the reservoir and the dam.
Yeah. So now another question I have is about, with the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal, talk about canals over in China. how did the Catskill Reservoir system, the aqueduct, not gain as much traction as those? I mean, it's not worldwide, but this is accomplishment that is unlike no other. This is the world's best water reservoir system in the world. Like the aqueduct is gravity fed. There's no freaking pumps. Like, how does this not gain the traction and knowledge like to everybody around the world that this is insane?
Well, it was famous at the time. You know, there was a 2-day pageant in Central Park in 1916. I mean, it was, believe me, it was trumpeted. There were zillions of picture postcards of the reservoir, starting from when they were first starting construction, even, but especially afterwards. You know, people would make day trips from the city just to drive along the causeway. It was one of the wonders of the world, but it just got overshadowed by many things subsequently, right?
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Do you think that New York City has ever acknowledged the harm and its callous attitude to the folks of the Catskills and immediate surrounding areas where it built its reservoirs?
No. The closest is the speech by then Manhattan Borough President, future Mayor Anthony Impellitteri, at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Pacton Reservoir, where he apologized. You know, we understand. Literally says something like, "We understand we're tearing down the old homestead where even the grandparents were born," you know, that kind of stuff. That's the closest they ever came. They're never going to issue a formal apology unless they have to for some reason or another. And there's no earthly reason why they would have to. They would have to be nice people, and they're not, you know.
You don't even think people like down in New York City are just like, wow, this water is fantastic. Where do we get it from?
Listen, as I say, I lived in New York City for nearly 30 years. And the fact is that nobody there ever thinks about where their water comes from.
Very
It comes
true.
from the tap and is supplied to you by the city. Isn't that great? There's a lot of people in the city who have no idea it even comes from upstate. As far as they know, there's a giant aquifer under the island, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think, if anything, the city of New York can do to try to undo, to the greatest extent possible, the animosity and the feeling of hurt and sorrow that it's years of just doing what it wants upstate? What do you think it can do to undo that feeling? Anything?
Oh gosh, not much at this point. You know, the
High
harm's
five.
the harm's been done. The immediate generations are mostly dead. You know, even Catskill's people are dying out. And well, you know, they could just start being a little more. I mean, I'm thinking, for example, of the fact that the ring roads around the Ashokan, you know, 128A, no 128A, what is it, 28A, which rings a reservoir. They built it up into this kind of like weird super highway. You know, there's a giant like banks of lawn on both sides. It looks like the ideal road for, you know, getting your yayas out, but the speed limit is like 40, and there's no earthly reason for that. There's no traffic. You know?
Yep.
But it's an instance of the city just demonstrating its own control, you know?
Yeah. The speed limit's 35.
No, it's 45. 45.
No, it's not. It's 35. Trust me,
No,
I drive.
no. Boyceville to Woodstock is 45 miles an hour, and then it hits 40.
On
I'm not talking
28.
about 28. I'm talking
Oh,
about
28.
28A.
Oh, 28A. That's
Oh, that's on the other side. That's on the southern side. Oh, yeah, that's 35.
Yeah.
Lucy and I are on our way to Snyder's. So we're on 28A. Yes.
It's basically like slow. You got your tractor going, basically. That's the fastest you can go.
Man, I drove by Snyder's the other day. I hadn't been by there in a long time, and it looked completely overgrown. Is that still a going proposition?
You could have told us you drove by it 10 years ago and you were shocked it looked completely overgrown.
No, I remember it 10 years ago. I even drank there a few times 10 years ago. And I remember driving in and seeing people butchering deer in the parking lot too.
Yep.
Yeah. You're sure they were deer and not somebody from the city?
Jesus Christ. That's a little too far. Oh God, Tad. Good Lord. Yes. Butchering deer. That's typical there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's, you wonder like if sometime they will ever, social media is big, if they'll ever like have a media day of where they acknowledge where their water comes from and kind of like show the information that, hey, your water comes from up in the Catskills. But,
I mean, no matter what you do, you could have a program of, occasional spots on television, to the extent that television still exists, and run a couple billboards saying our wonderful water comes from these hills and the bountiful nature that blah blah blah. But how many people are going to take that seriously? The fact is, you have water nerds. I mean, believe me, they exist. And there are plenty of them, including in the 5 boroughs, especially these days with, more and more environmental consciousness. But to the extent you have more and more environmental consciousness, you also have a growing number of people who just don't want to hear about it.
True.
And never will.
True.
Because that's A, human nature, and B, offshoot of our media saturated, etc.
They only want drama. They don't want positivity.
Right. Well, they want, I don't know what they want. They want, scandals involving athletes and movie stars.
Yeah. And we don't have those up here. Not in the, we have beautiful mountains and snowstorms and stuff. So
a lot of movie stars around though.
They're hidden. They are hidden. Yeah. They like to hide themselves.
Well, so it's their hideout upstate.
It is. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. So last question, Lucy. We have a thing called post-hike brews and bites. Give a shout out to your local restaurant, pub business after, you're in the Catskills and stuff. What do you got recommended?
Oh, my favorite place. I don't eat out much, but my favorite local place is the Taqueria Mi Pueblito on Broadway in Kingston.
Okay.
I started going to them when they were a food truck. Then they moved to a small restaurant. Then they took over the Dunkin' Donuts. So it looks like a Dunkin' Donuts, but it's a really, really excellent taqueria.
Oh, wow. All right. I will look that up and Tad will go there.
Yeah,
and they're from
definitely.
Princeton.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much, Lucy, for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your knowledge on the reservoir system. And once again, go out and purchase Lucy's book, 19 Reservoirs. Fantastic book. Yes, a fantastic book about the reservoir system and the displacement that they had with the towns and stuff to build for these waterways to get to New York City. Once again, Lucy, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Have a good night and hope to see you sometime in the future.
Okay, my pleasure. Many thanks. Have a good one.
You too.
Take care, Lucy. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Likewise.
Hey everyone, I just want to thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe and throw down a smooth review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform that you use. You can also check daily updates of the podcast, hikes, hiking news, and local news on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the official website of the show. Remember this, you gotta just keep on living in the Catskills, man. Livin.
Wicked, 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 wicked.